Hey guys, Ranger here, and welcome back to another video, and to the first episode in a new series that I would like to start doing, called Ranger Storytime or Storytime with Ranger, what have you. Um, this is a new series that I got the idea from. I had somebody on another video of mine suggest that I do a video series like this because I enjoyed hearing like stories of things that had happened to me before, things that have happened to me, um, and they enjoyed hearing that. So somebody else agreed and said it was a good idea. So I pitched the idea over on Facebook, and I had a couple of other people agree also with the idea, saying that it was a good idea, that they would enjoy it. So here I am with a new series, hopefully called Ranger Storytime or Storytime with Ranger. I'm going to call it Ranger Storytime because it's a shorter title. And the concept again is just I like for me to share share stories of things that have happened to me. Some of them are most of them are comical, the ones that I'll be sharing, so that hopefully you guys will get a really good laugh out of it. But some of you I know will relate to these stories. But to start this series off, I decided to share with you guys a pretty interesting story for something that happened to me. And as you can tell by the title, I know you're wondering what happened. Well, basically, I was a real-life Derpy. Like Derpy in MLP, I got to be a background character in a Christmas movie. And I have proof that this happened. You're probably wondering how and when did this happen. I have proof, and here's some of it right here. Here is a picture that I got with one of the cast members of the movie, Believe, on set. Yes, you might remember this gentleman here. This is David Louise. You might remember him as the dad on Disney Channel's Wizards of Waverly Place. You can check his filmography. He's been in many other TV shows and films as well. But he was one of the stars of this movie, and he wasn't the only one. I'm showing you some of the images here. These are some of the cast as well that was featured in the film. Ryan Oakland, Danielle Nicolette, Shawnee Smith. Somebody said that she was in one of the Saw films. Kevin Sizemore, I saw him in a Hallmark film. I know that there were others as well. Isaac Brown. He is currently on Disney Channel's Raven's Home. There's been other things that he's been on as well. But yeah, this was a real thing. This was a real thing that happened. This was a real thing that happened. And to show you the proof that I was in it, I'm going to show you some clips. I'm going to show you the clips of the movie where I was actually in the film. And so this first clip that I'm going to show you, and I'll show you the clips, and then I'll tell you the story of how it all transpired. The first clip here, as soon as I find it, the first clip here was set during the courthouse scene of the film. This was set during the courthouse scene of the film, and I'm going to show you the areas where I was actually in it.
Mr. Payton, is that your company can no longer afford.
As you can tell, David Louise is present in the film.
That's correct.
And whoopsies. Now here's actually where I was in the movie. This was the courthouse scene, and I'm actually right back here. In the film, I'm actually right back here. The guy that I was sitting beside right here.
That's correct.
Well, it's been your responsibility since 1990 when your grandfather died, isn't that right? He started this tradition for the financial well-being of this community.
No, he started it as a gift to this community to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Christmas was never intended to generate profit for this town or for any other, and certainly not for itself. And that's why I'm here tonight to tell this community that as of last Wednesday.
Now here I'm again back here in the back. My head is pretty much right at the edge of this curtain, and again, I'm going to tell you a story about this. The guy that I was sitting beside right here with the jacket on, right here, he was one of the. I think he was one of the drivers. He was one of the caterers that catered to the film. And he was a really friendly fellow, really awesome to talk to. He'd been like in between takes. He told me about stories of his time out in L.A., the different places that he'd cater to, and I mean, it was just really awesome to talk to him and just hear all those stories.
The doors to Peyton Automotive were temporarily closed, and while this has put such a strain on my business, I cannot
Again,
continue
back
this
here,
tradition.
I managed to be.
I don't think we.
Fourthly,
Now, here I am again during this scene here, and this scene here was I'm right here on this corner here. This was the wall. Uh, Mr. Oakland's character, Matthew, was coming around this corner here, and he was supposed to encounter the angry townspeople. And this scene right here, I was positioned right here at the edge. Now, an interesting thing about this particular scene here, some people might think that this whole courthouse was a setup. It's a real courthouse. It is a real courthouse. They didn't change anything in it for the scenery. Now, this right here was the best scene, honestly, where I was in the film. And there's plenty of stories here, but this scene right here, I'm here. This was me. I'm the guy standing in the tan khakis, in the long black coat that crosses my arms right here as Mr. Oakland's character comes out of the courthouse. And this is me. To find his car egged, and I'm right behind him. Right here. Again, right here I am. Standing with my arms crossed. This was honestly the best scene where I was actually in the movie. But that was one scene where I was actually in the movie as well. But that was the scenes where I was actually in the movie. And so, like Derpy, I got to be a background character in this movie, as you can tell. Now, how did this happen? It started early. It started back in probably around February. You also probably noticed the date on the pictures. You probably also noticed the date on the picture that I took as well. But again, what happened was it was probably back in, I think it was back in February. I found out that this film crew was actually doing some filming in a town near me, and they needed some background characters. They needed some townsfolk for the courthouse scene and for a factory scene and a few other scenes that they were going to be doing. And so they needed some townsfolk to actually participate. And so, but they were just selecting a select number of people. And so they had a website where you could actually go and you could actually fill out a form, send a picture of yourself, and send it to them, and they would go over the picture to see if you fit what they needed for the townsfolk. And I did not know this, but my mom actually was the one who found it. She found out about the movie being filmed in this town, and so she suggested that I sign up for it. And so I signed up for it. I sent a picture of myself, and then I didn't think anything else about it because I said, no way, it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen, not in a million years. And because this is just not something that happens, especially to some people, to somebody like me. And next thing I know, a few days later, my mom asked me, did I check the email? Did I check my email? And I'm like, no, not yet. And I was like, what's the point? It's not going to do any good. But I checked it anyway, and I was shocked. I remember whenever I checked the email, my mom was standing next to me, and I found the email saying that they wanted me to be in that town, the next day. I think it was at 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock that morning the next day. And I remember my mom was standing on my right, and she was like jumping up and down. She had grabbed my arm, and she was literally trying to wring my arm off. Meanwhile, I'm just standing there like my mouth was completely agape, my mind was blank, and I just thought, there's no way. And I thought, if this is a dream, I don't want to wake up. If I'm dead, don't revive me just yet. Don't revive me just yet. Let me live this. And so they wanted me to gather some clothes together for wardrobe to go over. And so immediately I started going through my clothes, trying to find something that would look good. Uh, and I went with that turtleneck, those khakis, and that jacket. And I brought like literally a duffel bag of other clothes for wardrobe to go over. And I was supposed to be in that town the next morning at 10 a.m. And I think I got up at like 8:30 that morning. I didn't have to work that night, but I got up at 8:30 that morning. I ate I ate breakfast and then left. And I was pretty much in town right on the dot at 10 o'clock. And they told me to go inside of this little building, and it was just so cool. Like whenever I first pulled in, I had to park in this parking garage. Uh, Probably about a 5-minute walk from where the town was, from where they were filming. So I parked there and I started walking, lugging the duffel bag behind me. And I got to where, and as soon as I crossed the bridge to the town, immediately I saw all the film trucks. I saw all of these big white panel trucks. I saw film crews moving equipment around. I saw just a bunch of trucks and other cars and everything that people had used to transport the equipment. And I go inside of this little shop. I really don't know if it's open or if they just had it open for this particular day, but I walked inside, and out of all the people that actually signed up for that, there was maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 people, that maybe 50 maybe, that was actually selected for these particular for these particular scenes. And I was one of those people. I mean, I know there were tons and tons of people that filled out those forms, but out of all the ones that were chosen, I was actually one of the ones that were chosen. And so I walked in, and immediately, like, I was nervous, honestly. I was nervous because I said, this never happens to me. But I want this. I love it. And so, uh, and so, the lady that sent me the email, she came in, introduced herself, and so she told us to just wait in there, that wardrobe would be along shortly, and to go over our clothes to see if they would work for the next shot. And so just a few minutes later, wardrobe comes in, this girl, and she was freaking awesome. I mean, she had like this beret on, she had glasses on, and she had like I think her hair was naturally auburn. I think she was naturally redheaded. But she had like, I think, purple streaks in her hair. It was, I mean, she looked awesome. And she was young. I mean, she was probably like in her early 20s, and she went, oh, I mean, she looked at my clothes and went, and just simply went, you're good. And I said, oh, okay, thank you. And so after wardrobe went over the clothes, they told us to just sit down and wait until they call us for the next shot. So we sit down in this little, like a little cafe thing, and they called us for the next shot, which was this courthouse scene. They called us in for one of these courthouse scenes, and they get us to go in, and actually no, that was the second time that they called us. First time they called us, I'm sitting there, and next thing I know, they come in, and that same woman who sent me the email motions for me to follow her, and they picked another guy and another girl, and just the three of us. They led us across the road to where the courthouse is that you see in this film, and they led us inside. My first time ever being in a courthouse, and I go inside this courthouse, and they tell us to sit, and they sit us down. They actually sat us down in. They actually sat us down in these seats right here. The very seats right here where you see these characters here sitting at David DeLuise and such. I mean, where you see these three people sit. This is where they sat us down at, and I did not know that at the time, but I was sitting right where David DeLuise was. The girl was sitting right here on the right where this woman is, and the other fellow was sitting right here on the left. And I was sitting right here in the middle where David DeLuise sat. And they sat us down, and I remember the guy that was sitting on the left right here, he poked my shoulder and was like, dude, it's a script. And I looked down on the desk right here in front. There was a script right there in front, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then immediately, and it was so cool because suddenly Ryan Oakwood and David DeLuise come out of another room, and they sit down right in front of us. They sit down in this smaller pit area. I forgot what that was called. Right in front of us as they begin to go over their lines. And immediately, as soon as I saw Mr. DeLuise, I thought, I know him. I know him. I can't remember where I've seen him before, but I know him. And I remember they sat down in front of us, and he just looked up at us with this big, bright smile and just said, hey. We just smiled and said, hey. And meanwhile, I'm racking my brain trying to think who this person is because I'm terrible with memory. I mean, I am, but I'm terrible with names. And Ryan smiled, and he said hi as well. And I'm thinking, I know this guy. Where have I seen him before? And they go over their lines a few minutes, and then they get up, head into makeup, which they had in a back room, designated for the cast, which was where I was here during that picture. And the girl next to me, she leans over and says, I saw him before, but I can't remember where. I leaned close to her, and I said, I know I've seen him before, but I can't remember where it was. There was like 5 seconds of silence, and then she said, wasn't he on a Disney Channel show? Immediately, I'm like, oh my gosh. The dad from Wizards of Waverly Place. Jerry. Wizards of Waverly Place. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I said, that's where he's from. Disney Channel, Wizards of Waverly Place. And so, and then I realized, as they begin to set up the cameras and everything around us, I'm like, wait a minute. We're the stand-ins! They got us to be the stand-ins for the actors here. We were the stand-ins! And they used us pretty much as test dummies while they set up the lighting and everything to make sure that the lighting was just right on our faces. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, I don't want this to end. And, I mean, it was just so super cool. I mean, we were there probably a good half hour while they set up the lighting, the equipment, everything, the dollies, the boom mic, everything, just setting up every single piece of equipment. And it was just so freaking awesome. And I remember then they tell us that we can go back to this little this little shop. And so we go back inside. And I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes pass, maybe. And then they call us back in. They call us and the other people, the other people that was in this cafe in. And we all go in, and then they begin sitting us down. And as they begin to rehearse, as they begin to play out this whole scene here, this entire scene here, where they're talking about the pageant and everything and about the funds. This entire first scene right here was filmed during the day. It looks like it takes place outside. I mean, it looks like it's being done at night. It wasn't. This was being done early in the afternoon, probably about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And it's done to look like nighttime, but it really wasn't. It was done in the day.
It's no secret it made for the pageant.
And again, they sit us down. And I remember there was one particular moment, like, they are very, you would not believe that, but they are really, really picky. These green lamps that set right here, at one point, they even had to move one of these lamps. They had to scoot it and angle it because they didn't want the reflection of the cameras visible in those lamps. That's awesome. That is really, really good attention to detail. And and the cameras that they used were so big. And one of the boom mics, there was a guy off on the side over here on the left side of the courthouse. And he was literally like on a ladder holding this big long pole with the boom mic over top of it. And it was, oh, you could not see it, but over here on the side, out to the side right here, out of camera view, they had these posts. They had these like black screens set up to help sort of like reflect and absorb the light, so like redirect the light so that it wouldn't be too bright. And it was really, really cool for that. And they also had some bright lights over here on the side that was aiming at us in the back, and those were super bright, man. I mean, you could not look at those things. Your retinas would just blow out of your skull. But like, it was really interesting. They did this particular scene here several times, actually. They did this particular scene here several times, and I gotta say, I mean, actually seeing David DeLuise act is just a blast. I mean, he is so funny. He is hilarious to watch, and Ryan Oakland is exactly the same way. I mean, it was just really awesome to hear these two on behind this on set. It was really awesome to hear all these people here. And after they had us leave, I mean, after they did this take right here, they let everybody go back and sit inside this village, or sorry, this little, they called it something village. They called it something village. But that was the name of the shop, Something Village. And I remember they had us go back inside this little shop and sit, and we sat there until they called us in a little late, sometime later, for the next courtroom scene, which was the second scene where they called us in for the next scene that was filmed, which was also shot inside the courthouse. They had us do the scene where Mr. Oakland's character comes down the hallway, and I remember the camera director, the camera director was holding his hand up like this, like he was actually having the camera, and he was looking through his hands to see the best angles for how the camera was going to look. And they did several test shots with the camera, and you would not believe it, but there was, like, the camera that they had, there was a rig set up where somebody could actually wear this big camera on their body, and they went around the corner and they walked down using that, and they also did that to test the camera angle to see how that it was going to look, and they positioned each of us particularly in the hallway, so that they wanted different people in different spots, and that one guy that you with the glasses that you see like approach Ryan's character, like they directed him and told him to do that. They told him for him to approach, and I remember standing there in the hall, and they told me for me to lean back and cross my arms, and so I did that, and then I think I braced my leg, like I bent my knee and brace my foot up on the wall behind me, and they said that's good, and so they did several takes with that. Like before they did, like in between the takes, Ryan Oakland was walking back and forth, talking to everybody. He was just so extremely friendly. Like everybody during this whole thing. I mean, just everybody on set was just so friendly. Ryan Oakland, David DeLuise, Lance Nichols, Isaac Brown. I mean, everybody was just so amazing. I mean, the cast was just amazing. They were just so friendly, and just the crew was just awesome as well. I mean, it was just a really wonderful atmosphere. I mean, it was not really. I mean, like for me, it was not stressful. I mean, I loved it. I freaking loved it. And I remember after they did that courthouse scene, it was beginning to get dark. And so they were going to do one more scene, which is the segment where you see Ryan's character, Matthew, come out of the courthouse the first time to find that his car has been egged. And I remember before that scene, they gathered all of us together in the courthouse, in the hallway, right where you see Ryan's character walking down that hallway. They gathered us in that exact same hallway, and they said that they said that they knew that some people had to work the next day, some people probably had to work that night, and they said if you need to leave, we completely understand. That's totally fine. But they said if you could stay, they would really appreciate it, because they still need a few people for the next shot. And they said if you had to leave, that was fine. They completely understood. But if you could stay and dedicate a little more of your time to that, they would also really appreciate it. And I remember they said if you can stay, raise your hand. And immediately, the second that she got done saying that, I'm like I was not going anywhere. I would have stayed all freaking night if I had to. Like, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I was not going anywhere. Wild horses could not drag me away from this. And I remember, so they, some of the people left, and so the people that stayed, myself included, they had us go and sit back up in the upper section. No, that was the second night. That was the second night. Okay. After they did that other take inside the courthouse there, they came back inside. By this point, it was nighttime. Like, you would not believe how long it takes to get everything set up. And there was another scene that they filmed inside the courthouse as well that I was not part of. But I remember after they did that scene, by that point it was nighttime, and I think it was probably about 9:30 at night. And they said that they're done with the background actors, the background characters, for the night. But if we could come back the next morning at 11 o'clock, if we could, and they would use us again in some more scenes. And so I think they might have asked, I keep thinking that they asked if you could show up the next day, raise your hand, and I'm like, I'm going to be there. And so before we left that night, and so before we left that night, they actually paid us. Like, we got paid for what we did. Like, I got paid I got paid $50 for being there that day. And so I was there altogether for 3 days, and so I got paid $150 for that. And I know somebody would say, you know, that's not a whole lot, but then again, $150 for being a background character, it was so freaking cool. And I remember, so that night, I walked to my truck, got in my truck, and I had to work that night. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I remember, like, working that night, my goal was to get done as quickly as I could so that I could go home. Because I knew I needed to get some rest. I did not have very much rest that previous day, and I knew I needed to get some rest before I went back the next day, because I wanted to be at the top of my game. I did not want to break. I did not want to lose focus. I wanted to be ready. And screw work. This is awesome. I am a real life Derpy. I'm a background character. I'm totally Derpy. I'm totally Derpy hooves. The only thing missing is the wall eyes. And as you know, Derpy is one of my favorite characters. One of my favorite characters in MLP. And so here I am. I'm getting to be Derpy. Here I am derping it up, on set. And so I remember that night at work, I had to tell my boss whenever I got done that I needed to leave. And this was probably about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I need to go. And he was like, why? And I'm thinking, bitch, none of your business. Like, everything's, I'm thinking to myself, like, I didn't want to have to tell him, the reason why. But I said, I was hesitant at first, but I'm like, he's not going to let me go unless I give a logical reason. Even though everything was done, I'm like, I told him I am going to be a background character in that movie that's been being filmed in town. And immediately, this sapsucker is like, it's probably not going to be it's probably not going to be a really good movie anyway. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, I'm having fun. Whether the film is great or not, the important thing is I'm having fun. And so, shut your face and let me go. I didn't tell him that, but that's exactly what was going through my head. And so, I remember I left work, and I got home, and I went home, I went to bed, got up, and I think whenever I got home, I checked the email, and there was another email that said that they had delayed it till noon. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I remember, I thought, yay, I get 1 hour more sleep. So I think I got up about 10:30 that morning, ate breakfast, got ready, got my clothes, and got my duffel bag, and the clothes that I was wearing here. Now, as you can tell, in the two different scenes of me, you'll notice, now you'll probably notice here, there are two different segments here. Now, you'll probably notice this scene with me in the background here, in the back of the courthouse, you'll probably notice that I'm wearing a tan jacket. You'll probably notice over here that I'm wearing a tan jacket in the background. That's because I was wearing a tan jacket at that point. I was wearing a tan color jacket, and you'll notice later on, as you can see, the tan color jacket. You'll notice later on whenever I'm here in this hallway, you'll notice here the tan jacket that I'm wearing. And you also notice whenever Mr. Oakland's character comes out of the courthouse, you'll notice I'm wearing the black jacket. Again, the reason for that was because these were filmed on 2 different days. These were filmed on 2 separate days, and the background characters, it's funny that some people have made mentions before with MLP about the reuse of background characters. I was that character. Like, they used me twice. They used me in the same shot, but like I'm supposed to be 2 different people. Like, you don't know that it's me. In the first shot here where I'm wearing the tan jacket, you don't know that it's me. But here I was with the black jacket standing outside. And so, yeah, I was that character. That was what happened here. I was reused, and I just swapped clothes. Well, switched jackets. But again, that was exactly what happened here. And I remember um, whenever I got down there that second day, I remember whenever I'm walking along the sidewalk, uh, pulling my duffel bag behind me, I glanced down and I noticed there was like a couple of dollar bills on the sidewalk. I'm like, what the heck? I pick them up and I take a few steps. There's another dollar bill, and I'm like, okay, who's leaving me a money trail? I take a few steps. There's another dollar, and I'm thinking, all right, like whose wallet exploded? So I pick up. There was probably $5 or $6 altogether. I pick it up. I put it in my pocket, and as soon as I get back to that village shop, I find the woman who sent me the email, and I pulled the money out of my pocket, and I told her that I found it out on the sidewalk, and somebody had to have lost it. And I said, it's not mine. Somebody had to have lost it. And I remember she held the money up and she said for everybody to check their wallets and their purses to see if see if anybody lost any cash. And somebody had to have claimed it, but at like nobody that I recall at that moment, nobody claimed it. So I have no idea whose it was. But and I have no idea what happened to it. But again, it was just like $6. But still, I remember we sat in the top of this little shop, and I remember we sat there waiting, and probably after maybe about like an hour, they called us in for this other courtroom scene, where Mr. Oakland's character it's a second shot where he's inside, and you see Shawnee Smith's character as well. And they're doing that scene inside the courthouse. And again, they did several takes with that. And one particular thing that happened, and unfortunately on the DVD it's not included, but this is an awesome story that I have to tell you about. And again, this is why it was so much fun to work with these people, on set. I remember there was this moment where there was this little lady that was part of the audience there, that was part of the background characters. And she said something. I can't remember what she said to David DeLuise. I can't remember what she said to him. But then he grinned, this Cheshire Cat grin. He stood up and he started slowly pretending to unbutton his shirt. Everybody in that whole courtroom started laughing. He stopped. He sat down. He was laughing as well. I wish they had been recording and put that on the DVD. But unfortunately, they didn't do it. But oh man, it was just so hilarious. I mean, it was just so awesome. And I remember after they did the takes right there for that second shot, it was like, I can't remember if it was Mr. Oakland's birthday that day, or like like his birthday was the next day or something, or was the day before. But I remember suddenly one of the crew made a mention about it being his birthday, and suddenly they roll out this cake that the crew had catered and made for Mr. Oakland. And like everybody in the courthouse just started singing "Happy Birthday to You," and then we started clapping. And he blew out the candles, and again, I wish they had to put that on the DVD, but they didn't. But I remember that happening, and then I remember I think they called us back into the courthouse again. This same day, they called me and this other guy and this other girl inside the courthouse again, so that we could be the stand-ins for these characters in the courthouse. And again, here I am at this point thinking I'm sitting where David DeLuise was sitting, and like I'm thinking, oh my gosh! And again, it was just so cool because they were setting up all of the equipment and everything. And then I remember they also both days. They catered lunch to everybody that was going to be, the background characters. They catered breakfast. They catered breakfast to us and lunch. It was kind of together, but they catered to everybody. And I remember getting like a little bowl of oatmeal and eating that, and like a little corn dog. And I remember just sitting up in this building, and then I took a walk outside at one point to get some fresh air, a little bit of fresh air, because it was a little bit stuffy inside this building. Because this building, again, I don't know if they actually use it any, or if they just opened it for this day. I don't know if the air conditioning works. But I remember we finished. I remember walking outside, and I managed to get a couple of pictures of the catering. I managed to get one picture actually of one of the catering trucks, which you'll see right here outside. And then I walked back inside and sat down. And then I remember later on that evening they called us for this other shot, which is the same shot right here where Mr. Oakland's character comes out of the courthouse to find that his car has been egged. And oh man, the story for that one. That was right outside the courthouse. And there was a couple things that I have to go over here. First off, it was cold that night. Like, whenever I'm standing there in this jacket here, during this particular scene here, where we're standing outside the courthouse, and there were two scenes that were shot here. During this first one right here, they only had two of those tan color jackets. And I remember as I'm standing right here, as we're standing right here, actually, I remember as we're standing right here, they only did 2 takes where Ryan's character comes out and sees his car has been egged. They only did 2 takes with that, and the reason was because they only had 2 jackets. They only had 2 of those 2 jackets. And I remember they did 1 take, and immediately they got the second jacket out, and they gave it to him, and he put it on. And he walked over to us and was like turning around, asking us if we saw any extra tags or anything, any tags or stickers or anything. And we were kind of laughing and saying, no, you're good. And so then they did the second take. And after they did that take, there was one more take that they were going to do. And this take here takes place. Let me find that particular clip here. Now the second take right here that they filmed, this was set during the courthouse, the second part of the courthouse scene. And I remember they had more people inside the courthouse at this point, and I was actually standing there was 2 scenes here, and it was kind of interesting. These were different scenes that was all put together. These were all different scenes that were actually put together. During this segment here, this was shot at night. This scene here was shot at night. And it was set at night. This scene here was actually shot kind of during the day. And I remember I was standing over here to the left, out of this view here.
But I would like for them to make up their own minds
and
what is best for their families and for this community, and not get bullied.
I was like, but this girl right here on the right, she was the one that was sitting to my right, and this guy right here is the one that's sitting on my left whenever we were doing the stand-ins. And I was standing right behind this girl to this guy's left, out of camera view.
Into something that might affect them for
but
a very long time.
I remember another particular scene here where they had this scene here where they walk out. This scene here was shot at night. This was actually shot at night. And I remember, wait a minute. I think I saw myself again. I think. Nope. I was wrong. Oh, wait, I am. Yeah, I'm there. Shoot, hang on. Yeah, I'm actually there. I'm right here. I'm right here. I'm actually right here. I wondered if I was actually in that shot, but yeah, I'm right here. I was wearing the same jacket, the same black jacket, so this was actually shot before the last scene.
Blackhorn, please sit down.
But
This meeting is adjourned.
but again, this shot right here, whenever everybody gets up and the camera moves to outside, this segment right here, where Ryan and Sean, his character, are coming out of the courthouse. They did a few takes with this, and I remember at one point, whenever Miss Smith was coming down these steps, her foot slipped. Again, that's not on the bonus features or anything on the DVD. I'm telling you this from, witnessing it. Like, her foot slipped at one point, and like, she actually started to fall, but she and Ryan caught her, and like they were both of them were laughing about it, but they had to go back inside the courthouse to do another take. But as the scene progresses, you'll notice a guy over here on the far right in a green jacket. Over here on the right, over here on this side right here. And this guy, I was to this guy's left. I was over here to this guy's left. And interesting thing about that, also, I have to point out, I have to also go back to that. I also have to say that that black police car that you see there's a black police car that you see in the courthouse whenever Ryan's character comes out of the courthouse. This black Charger, this black Dodge Charger over here on the left, with the clear light bar, that is an actual police car. That is an actual department car that they have. They only have one. They only have one car. Well, at the time, they only had one car in black, and that is like a 2012, 2013 Dodge Charger. Beautiful, all black police car, and it has all blue lights, and I think it has a one blue light on the back deck, and but again, it's a beautiful car. I mean, it is an actual department car. It is that car was not fabricated for this movie. That's an actual department car that was used in this film. And I got to stand beside this beautiful all-black Charger, solid mark unit, had police written on the side. Beautiful car. And I remember during this segment, whenever we're standing outside, they positioned me so that, and this other guy standing, so that whenever Ryan and Shawnee's character comes out, we're supposed to begin following them, but we're supposed to be talking to each other. And I remember before this other guy walked up, while they're getting everything ready, they positioned me and had me stand right there behind this Charger. Actually, the Charger was moved at this point. The Charger was no, actually, I think the Charger was still sitting there. But it was still sitting there, because I remember thinking, like, I was very close to this car, like here I was, the right rear quarter panel of this car was right behind me, and I'm thinking, do not bump into this thing. I mean, this is a marked police unit here. This is a marked squad. Do not bump into this thing. You don't want to bump into a police car. And so I remember sitting there, I remember they positioned us and had us stand so that we're watching, or they positioned me standing there. And I remember I was wearing that jacket, that black jacket, or that black coat. I was wearing those tan khakis, that one white, like a turtleneck, and it was cold that night. I mean, this was in March. It was cold that night, and this was the same day that I got that picture taken with David DeLuise. And I remember at this point, like, no joke, it was like midnight. We had been there since 11 o'clock since 11 or 12 noon that day, and here it was midnight. And I remember it was I'm sorry, it was after midnight. It was close to 1 a.m. in the morning. And I remember I didn't have to work that night, which I would have called in, no joke. Like, if I had to work that night, I would have called in. Like, screw work. I'm in a movie, dang it. And so I remember standing outside that courthouse and just feeling the wind. Like, there was a breeze blowing that night. And I remember feeling the wind blowing through those khakis. And my legs were shaking inside of those khakis because it was cold. But I remember I had my hands in my pockets trying to keep my hands warm, and I'm just like, I can see my breath. And I remember I can feel the breeze, and I'm thinking, I don't care if I freeze to death. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to complain whatsoever. I don't care. Nothing is bothering me right now, apart from the cold. But I don't care if I freeze to death and turn into a popsicle and turn into like Crash Bandicoot, frozen in ice here. I'm staying tonight. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I am not passing this by. And I remember during one of the takes, whenever they were getting ready to start filming, there was this guy that drove past on the road that drove past up on up on the highway that went past the courthouse, or the four lane blacktop that went past the courthouse up on this elevated road. There was a guy that drove past that night. And he had like that really loud exhaust system on his truck, and with him was a motorcycle. And I remember they drove past, and I remember one of the crewmen said motorcycle, and everybody just stopped and waited till these vehicles went past, so they could begin resuming filming. And I remember standing on the sidewalk right there and feeling that breeze blowing, and I remember looking up and I could see the stars and thinking, and I remember then turning to my left, and here's the crew and everything getting the cameras and the lighting ready, and I'm just thinking to myself, this is such an amazing opportunity. This never ever happens to me, and here I am. I'm a background character in a movie. And I'm thinking, Lord, thank you so much for blessing me with this opportunity. And I'm like, I am not going anywhere. I want this to last forever. Like if I could have stayed all night, I would have. Screw lack of sleep. Screw food. I was enjoying this way too much. And I remember thinking to myself, I'll stay as long as they need me to stay. I don't care how long it is. And then whenever this other guy in the green jacket, whenever they position him and I in front of each other, they directed us to mimic. They wanted us to pantomime. They wanted us, which is pretending that you're talking. And this is something you might not realize. Some people might not realize in films. But whenever you see like background characters talking, sometimes they're not actually talking. They instructed us to pantomime and pretend that we're talking, like move our mouths and our heads like we're talking to each other, but we're not actually saying a word. And so I remember they started shooting, and Ryan and Sean he came out of the courthouse. I'm standing there talking to this guy in this green jacket, and at this point I'm really glad that they didn't use that. I'm really glad that they didn't show me over on the side, because I don't know which take that they used. They did that several times, but like they want us to pantomime, and again they don't do just one shot and that's it. Like they do several takes, and sometimes they do a few takes to make to see how the lines work. They do a few takes, and then they might reposition the camera, do the take again a few more times, reposition the camera, maybe redirect a few people. That's how the process is done. And I remember whenever I'm standing in front of this guy and they tell us to pantomime, and so we start pretending that we're talking. We're like, and like at one point I just started, like, I couldn't help it, like I just started grinning. And the moment that I started grinning, like it felt weird, standing and pretending to be talking to somebody but you're not actually saying anything. It felt silly. And so here, like, I begin to grin, and whenever this guy sees me grin, he begins to grin. I begin to grin wider, and I actually kind of turn my head to the right to try to avoid looking like in the direction of so that they can't see my face, to see that I'm grinning like crazy here, like the Cheshire Cat. And I'm thinking to myself, please don't use this take. Please don't let this be the take that they use, because like we're both grinning, and the longer that we're grinning, the wider that our grins get, and then they yell, then they say cut, and this guy and I both like we kind of laugh, and I try to pull myself together for the next take, and I'm like, okay, don't grin, but I'm still grinning, and then I remember they did that take, and then they directed us to go to the. They told us to go back to the shop, and we go back in, and maybe 10 minutes later they come back in and say that that's all that they need us for that night, and they said that they said they really appreciated us staying, and told us that they were going to be doing filming another in a shop in a factory the next couple of days, and they told us where it was, and they asked if if we wanted to go to be part of that, and they would email us directions, and I'm like, yeah, I'm totally there. So and I remember like at this point I remember it was after 1 a.m. in the morning, and I remember whenever I'm leaving the shop, I remember at this point everybody lines up, and they pay and again they pay each of us $50 for being there, and we sign a waiver saying that it's totally fine for them to use us in the movie, for them to use our faces in the film. And I remember I have to go back upstairs to get my duffel bag. And I remember I walked upstairs, there was nobody else up there. And I remember I'm walking down, and there's the crew. Like, it's after 1 a.m. in the morning, and the crew's just then getting lunch or dinner. Like, the caterers were bringing food in, and the crew were just beginning to sit down. Here was wardrobe. Here was this other woman. Here was the film crew, the director. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh. And I didn't want to leave, honestly. Like, I wanted to stay. And I learned, like, through that whole process that I would totally be fine in that atmosphere. Like, being able to be on set with a film like that, I learned that I would totally be fine with it. I could totally adapt to it and be totally fine with it. And I freaking loved it. And if I could do it more, I totally would. And I remember walking in my truck that night, and it was like so calm. It was I think it was about 10 after, it was probably about 12 or 13 after 1 that morning. And I remember walking along the sidewalk. There was no traffic. Street lights were on. You could see the stars above. And I kind of felt sad, because I'm like, it's almost over. I didn't want it to end. I wanted it to keep going. But I was happy because I got to experience this opportunity. And I remember getting in my truck, and there was nobody in this parking garage but me. I got in my truck, and I turned the key, and it was 15 after 1. It was 15 after 1 in the morning. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It was I think it was 15 after 2 in the morning. I believe it was 15 after 2. It was 15 after 1 or 15 after 2 whenever I got in my truck. I turned the key, the clock came on. It was 15 after 1 or 15 after 2. And I remember I started driving home, and I thought, well, I can't stop anywhere and get something to eat because nothing's open. And I remember then they had us go. Then a couple days later, me and another guy that was going to also be in the movie, we actually ended up, we met, and we had to drive like 2 hours to get to where this where this next scene was being filmed. And the next scene that they filmed was in this factory. And this was a legit, like, real factory here. And the scene that they filmed here was inside of this factory. And this factory originally made like carburetors and things like that for cars. They also made them for tractors, and they had everything taped off and roped off. they had yellow tape on the concrete floor directing where the people were supposed to go. Like the factory was closed down. The crew had rented out the factory for a few days, and I remember the morning that this guy and I we got there early. Like we got there honestly before the crew, before anybody did. And I remember we pulled in and we parked, and there was another guy that was standing there in the parking lot, and he said, "Are you guys here for the movie?" We said, "Yeah." He said, "Just go ahead and park. The crew isn't here yet." And so we're like, "Okay." So we parked and we sit down on this little bench outside of one of the bay doors, and then boom, just a few minutes later, here comes like a white van in. Here comes another couple of trucks in, panel trucks. Pardon me. And wardrobe pulls this big, like that same girl with the beret. She gets out of this van, and like she and another guy is rolling in this big rack of clothes that they're using for the cast. Wardrobe rows and things like, here comes all these people with microphones on, carrying equipment in, cameras, everything. And me and this guy, we get to sit outside and watch them carry everything inside. And so somebody else shows up and tells us and the few other people that showed up for us to go and wait in the break room in this building. And so we go and we sit in there. And I remember sitting there, and they begin to, this other woman, again, who sent us the email, she comes in, she begins to go over with us what they're planning on doing for that day, what their agenda is, the scenes that they're probably going to be filming. And I remember they ended up, at one point, while we're sitting there, I remember I packed a little bit of lunch with me, or snacks. I had a can of Vienna sausage and Cheetos, a bag of Cheetos, and I had an Archie comic that I was flipping through while waiting. You know, me and this other guy, like, I had 2 bags of Cheetos, 2 cans of Vienna sausage, and I remember asking him, did he want some? He said, yeah, sure. So he and I both, we each ate a bag of Cheetos, and we just sat there talking, and then they get us to go in. They direct us to another scene where to another segment. They direct us to another section of the building where this particular scene took place, where Isaac's character is on this machine. Here, this particular scene here, where he's on this machine, and I remember like that was very interesting because I'm actually here in the background behind these people here. I was there, you can't see me, but I am there. And this gentleman over here in the blue shirt with the yellow hat, he was the one that I rode with. Very, 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 very friendly fella. But this scene here, they did a few different takes with this right here, where they had Isaac's character on this on this machine. And then this other scene here, also have to tell you, this factory, again, all these old press machines, like all this factory right here, this is not a set. All this is real. All this was real. All of this was exactly where it was placed. All of this was real. None of this was made up for this film. All this was real. Every placement, everything here was exact to the factory. And some of these old press machines that they used for stamping things that you'll see here was actually still, they could still work them. I mean, they were still being able to be used. The guy that was there that owned the factory, he was there on set as well, like, you know, watching, surveying everything. And he said that he brought these machines in from overseas, and that obviously they still have, you know, obviously they have modern machines now that can do the printing, but they still have these old machines. And some of these machines were dated. Like there were date stamps up on the top of the machines, up on the upper sections up here of the machines that told the dates, that told the dates of the machines, the date that the machines were manufactured. And one of them was dated 1950 something. And or that the machines were brought in. And again, one of the date stamps on the machine was I think it was 1950 or 1960 something. And this scene here, where Mr. Oakland and Mr. Brown's characters are, they're coming through here. This particular scene here, we're standing off to the side right here, and they're going through, and Ryan is supposed to be showing everybody how to run these machines. I'm kind of standing off here over to the side, and then there was another scene in the movie where Isaac's character comes through this packaging conveyor belt, and they did that one several times as well, where Ryan's character like puts like a stamp on Isaac's head, and they did that one several times as well. But that one was also interesting as well, because at one point, instead of Isaac that came through the conveyor belt, they had one of the other crew members was like playing a prank on Ryan and the crew, and so one of these other crew members came through the conveyor belt instead of Isaac's character. Everybody was laughing about it. But it was really fun on set. Like, there was just a lot of fun, a lot of really great people, and I remember they did a couple of different scenes this particular day. I was present during a couple of them, but wasn't actually there featured in these particular scenes. I remember one of the scenes that they used was inside of the factory, and they wanted us to kind of pace back and forth. They had cues for us, the markers where we were supposed to, the camera was moving and we were supposed to walk across the screen. And I remember doing that, and at this point, it was actually warm inside this factory, and so we were supposed, and the sun was shining outside. It was probably like 50 degrees outside, and I burn up real easy, and so here I was supposed to be wearing this thick fleece, a thick fleecy jacket, and I was getting real warm inside this factory, and in between takes, every time I could, I was taking the jacket off and then putting it back on before the takes before they would set everything up for the next take. And I remember they did a few different takes that day, and it was sometime that night, or it was sometime that evening, probably about 6-7 o'clock that evening. We actually got to go home, and we drove the 2 hours back, and we met with my parents at a Walmart. And then I remember we went 2 different days. There were 2 days that they were doing it that we actually was able to go. And the second day that we went, I remember whenever we were on our way, I remember they did this other scene, another scene in the factory as well, where they did a few other scenes of the people in the factory, and I was present for some of those scenes as well, but those didn't make it into that. One of the scenes, I think that was the second day, was whenever they had the characters kind of walking back and forth, and if you watch the movie, there's a few other scenes that they filmed inside the factory, and so most of the time we were sitting in the break room waiting for the moments whenever they were going to use the background characters, kind of like Derpy. I was just sitting in the background waiting to be used. And I remember the second day, whenever we were getting ready to leave, the factory again, they paid us. I was actually wrong. There were 4 days that we were there, and so I got paid $200 for that altogether. And I remember after we left the second day, it was raining the second day whenever we were leaving, and I remember I didn't want to leave. I honestly didn't, because again, once in a lifetime opportunity, I didn't want to leave. But I thanked them. The woman that sent me the email, I thanked her. I told her it's been really fun. I really enjoyed it. And then me and this other guy, we went out to the vehicle, and it was raining. And I remember it stopped raining. He called his wife. I called my mom, let him know that we were on our way home, and so then we were on our way back home, and it had stopped raining by this point. And I remember as we're driving, I see something blue out of the corner of my eye, and I immediately recognized the shape. I turned my head, and I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's a super bird." And I just said it kind of to myself, and this older gentleman here, he was like, "What's that?" And I said, "I'm pretty sure that guy had like a 69 or 70 Superbird, Plymouth Superbird in his yard." This guy immediately, he's like, he starts looking for somewhere to turn around. So we turn around, and we go back down the interstate, turn around again, and we pull into this guy's yard, where I see the Superbird. And this is a picture of the Superbird right here that we saw. A beautiful car. And again, my first time ever seeing a real Superbird in real life. I mean, this thing was beautiful. And as soon as I got back in the car, this guy, he tells me for me to send him that picture whenever I get back home. So I did. Like, as soon as I got back home, I sent the guy the pictures of the car that I took. And so that was the final day of that. And during the premiere of the movie, it was so cool. During the red carpet premiere of the movie, I was there for the red carpet premiere, and I got to actually meet Isaac Brown's parents. Really, really friendly people. Really, really awesome. And Kevin Sizemore and Ryan Oakland were both present as well, and actually got to get my picture taken. Actually got to get a couple pictures taken with them during the premiere, during the red carpet premiere as well. And these were the pictures that I actually got to have taken. And I remember inside the theater, they were I think they were having technical difficulties actually getting the movie to start. They were having issues with the projector. The very project, like, there are 3 cinemas in this movie, and the other 2 cinemas, like, all 3 cinemas were playing the movie. And so the other 2 cinemas were already playing the film, but the particular cinema that we were in, including Ryan, including Kevin Sizemore, they were having technical difficulties. And so to keep us entertained, Kevin Sizemore gets up and he starts asking the audience there, was there, like, did they have any questions? Like, for him, did they have any questions? And so people started asking questions. And I remember he had his phone, Ryan had his phone up. And he was kind of doing a little vlog or like a video. And he turned, had his back to the audience, and he said that it was he said it was the premiere of the movie Believe, and he asked the audience if they could say the same thing. And so everybody, including myself, we're just like, we just cheer Believe. And so I remember after that, after the red carpet premiere, we just kind of we were just all kind of hanging out in the lobby, and just talking. And then later they had to leave, or they had to leave and go on back to LA. And so we ended up going home after the movie was over. Pardon me, everybody was just standing around talking. We kind of stood around talking until it was time for the theater to shut down. So I remember going back home, and but yeah, I actually got to be a background character in this Christmas movie. Oh, and there was another segment also that I have to detail as well. This particular opening scene here, this particular scene that the movie opens up with Ryan's character and Shawnee Smith. Here, this particular scene here, they did a few takes with this right here. I was also present. I was in the background here. You didn't see me, but what they did here with this particular setup, is they had a simulated Christmas festival. And this was another day that they had. They had a simulated Christmas festival where up at this park, and they had people. They had a simulated Christmas festival, and it was like in late March. It was warm that day, but you were supposed to dress like it was cold, like it was like December or November, and so we all had to dress in warm, really warm clothes. And I remember it was really really cool. And I remember me and that same gentleman that went to that factory were walking around, and they actually have these actual vendor carts set up with actual food, you know, that you can eat. And I remember we're walking past this vendor stall, and we see this little plate of chocolate cupcakes, chocolate cupcakes with chocolate icing. And I remember the lady had a card, or like a piece of paper taped above the cupcakes that said "Death by Chocolate." And I remember this guy and I both looked at each other and said, "What a way to go!" And so we each got one of those cupcakes. And there was a lot of people that turned up for this event. And a couple things that I also want to point out about this as well, which is really cool, is like this particular scene here, they had all these tents right here lined up together for this particular scene. They had other vendors and everything outside of this, but this particular pathway here was where the two characters were supposed to walk down. And there was one moment where whenever Ryan is trying to hand Shawnee the cupcake, he actually accidentally drops it at one point. Like whenever he tries to hand it to her, at one point he accidentally drops it. Both start laughing, and like other people start laughing as well. So they have to get a new cupcake for that particular shot. But I remember there was another scene here. And again, this shot here was filmed late at night. Like this was late at night whenever this scene was filmed. And this right here was the entryway. This Merry Christmas sign here. This was the entryway to the actual festival. How many people use it, I have no idea. But a couple things interesting also is all this right here, these buildings, that really does exist. They didn't build that. That is not a set. That really does exist. And also this ambulance over here on the side. That's an actual ambulance. That's an actual ambulance service as well. They did not paint that for the movie. That is an actual ambulance service right there, which is really awesome. And this particular scene where they have everybody dance. Now right here, they had tables. They had wooden tables outside over here. Over here on the side, over on the left, and the back right here, where people could sit at. And they had this open section right here for people because they were going to have a dance segment right here where they had like the older people come out and dance. And they also had the bleachers set up right here in the back as well. And the bleachers are there all the time, but I remember sitting on those bleachers, and they had this big like extended camera that was like that they would swing down and like swing through the audience, and it would like pan back, and it was really cool to see that thing move and to see that actually happen. And the performances right here, Youth Alive, again, that was they were good. They called them, I think, the Trash Can Kids, but they were good. I mean, they were freaking good. Like you would actually have to hear them perform, but they were good whenever they performed. It was great to actually hear them perform. And I think the track that they performed was Unstoppable by Toby Mac, and they performed that with the Trash Cans. And again, they were awesome. They were really awesome. And they did have this performance right here where the guy is reading. Right here they had that. That was a full performance that they did for everybody to enjoy. And this train also that drives around right here, that's an actual train that they use around other parades and little events. Like the town actually has that. That is an actual thing. And I remember they had a simulator set up. I don't know, I didn't get to ride it unfortunately, but there was a simulator set up, and I remember looking at the sign of something that you could drive or fly, and I wanted to ride it because they had a simulator for the P-51D Mustang, and I wanted for it was I really wanted to be able to fly a P-51D Mustang in that simulator, but I never got to try it. But again, I remember this particular segment here where Ryan's character, he sees this little boy, and he gives him his candy cane.
Go, buddy.
This particular scene here, like, we're standing off in the background while they're filming this particular scene, and I remember they did this scene a couple of times, but it was really cool to be able to be there and see that actually happen. It was really, really awesome. And it was late at night whenever they finally finished, and a lot of people began to clear out, began to head on home. This particular segment here, where Ryan's character is standing and they shut down the lights, this was after we left that night, because it was late whenever we left. They were still filming. They were still filming the last few shots, and so, like, it was late at night, and so so we just had to go ahead and go, because we didn't like driving up to this park area. It's along a mountain road, and I hate driving along that mountain road. So I wanted to get back before it got extremely late. It was already dark though, but I remember we left, and a lot of people had already left as well, just the last few select people that were actually present. But I remember leaving there that night, and that was the final thing that they did. That was the final thing that they did. And but again, that's how that I actually got to be in a Christmas movie in the background. And again, the movie is Believe, and I'll show a picture of the title of the image of it right here. This is a title cover of the movie, and again, that is how that I got to be a background character in a Christmas movie, and that is everything that happened. And I gotta say, it was a truly wonderful experience. It truly was. Being able to be on set, being able to see all these people, be able to be behind the scenes and be able to see how a movie comes together, how the acting was, the dialogue. And you'd be surprised, but like all of those lines that Ryan says during the courthouse scenes, I would have imagined before that those were broken up. They would say a few lines and then do another take. But no, like all those lines, they memorized, and they did it. And so it was really awesome to be able to see firsthand how everything came together for this movie. And then watching it in the theater, knowing that I was there for those scenes, it was such a different experience being in the theater and watching those scenes play out that I was there to see happen. And like the memories, and I was able to sit there and say, I remember this, I remember that. And the scenes that I weren't there for, it was also interesting because it gave me a whole new perspective, being able to be behind the scenes and be able to see how everything came together. And I mean, it was a truly wonderful experience, and I really wish that, I really hope that I can have more experiences like that. I wish that I could have more experiences like that in the future. But again, that's definitely something that I will carry with me. And it was so cool because I remember, like, whenever it actually happened, and I found that, like, after the first day, I remember I sent a message to my best friend. And I remember I said, I remember I titled it, I'm a real life Derpy. And I began to tell them about what was going on, and they're like, OMG, man, this is awesome. And so I remember it was really, really cool. And it was also cool because the whole time that I'm there, I kept thinking about Derpy from MLP. I kept thinking about Derpy being in the background and how she was a background character, and here I am a background character, and I'm thinking, I'm a real life Derpy. And so, I'm just derping it up. And so it was really, really awesome though. And it was a very, very special experience. And like I said, one I definitely will not and did not take for granted. I freaking loved every single second of it. And I really wish that I could have more experiences like that in the future. And again, I know now that I would be totally fine in that atmosphere. I would be totally okay with doing that a lot more, being able to be on set and everything. I would be able to do it, and I realize that now, and it's totally my thing. It's totally my thing. I found out, I didn't know if I could do it or not, but I found out that I could, and I'm very happy for that. And but again, that is how I got to be a background character in a Christmas movie. And again, it still shocks me. Like even now, it's been 2 years since that happened, and I know people are probably wondering, why did you not say it? Why have I not said anything before now? There are a few reasons why I did not. The first was because whenever I found out about it happening, this was back in 2016. My channel was not as popular then as it was, in 2017, as it is now. And so I didn't really figure it would really matter that much, to be honest with you. I didn't really think, it would, my channel was still, I mean, my channel is still small, but I thought, I mean, it was even smaller then. And I thought, I don't really think very many people are going to pay that much attention to it. The second thing was because I was afraid that people would think it was a gimmick, that it was a gimmick that I was going to try to do to try to get more views, to try to get more subscribers. And I didn't want people to think that I was trying to bait them on. I was trying to lure them into something false to try to gain subscribers. And so I was afraid to do that. And another reason is, I was not under contract. I never signed a contract that said that I would not say anything about the movie, but I respected the people that was working on the movie, and so I did not want to say anything because I didn't want to disclose any information that they might not want leaked out, until after the film was finished. And so I just never said I didn't want to say anything, and so then I was also afraid to say anything, afraid, well, what if what if I make a mention that I'm supposed to be in this movie in the background, and then, what if they cut the scenes of me, and then people watch the movie, and they're like I watch it, I'm not in there, then I built people's hopes up from nothing, and it would just be really embarrassing and really ridiculous for me to say, hey, I'm going to be in this movie, and then it turns out every single scene with me was cut. And so I didn't want to say anything. I didn't have my hopes up. Like even after the filming, and I was imagining that I was already anticipating that no scenes of me would be featured. That's what I was telling myself, was no scenes of me would be featured. Don't get your hopes up. You're not going to be in this movie. Just go ahead and accept that. So I was not getting my hopes up for myself either. And so I just didn't want to really think about it. I didn't want to get my hopes up. And so whenever the film made its debut in September or October, that whenever it made its debut, it might have been November. Whenever it made its debut, I was shocked that they did leave a few scenes in there with me. And so also another reason I didn't say anything was because I thought, some people, would forget. Here it was March, and I thought people between March and whenever the film debuted, people would forget it. And then, like I said, I didn't want to get my hopes up. I didn't want to leak anything about the movie, so I just didn't want to say anything at the time because I didn't know what was going to happen. And then the movie comes out, and the film came out late 2016, and so I just kind of, at that point, I debated even then on whether to say anything, and I thought I'd wait. Because I kind of thought, I wonder if anybody will watch this movie and if anybody will notice me. And so I kind of hung back a bit because I wondered if anybody would ever actually watch it and see me in it. But it's not a really big film, like a really big film, like you would imagine, I guess, for like Pirates of the Caribbean or Fast and the Furious or something. It's not a really big thing like that. But it's I look at it like a Hallmark film. It's like a Hallmark Christmas film. And so I didn't say anything, and I just kind of didn't say anything about it. Like, I just didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about it after that. And it's not because like I was like it's not because certainly not that I certainly was not ashamed or embarrassed or anything like that. No, it's just like I'm just not a bragging person. I don't want to be. I'm not the kind of person to be and I don't want to be a bragging person. I don't want to be the kind of person that's like, hey, look what I can, look what I did. I'm not that kind of person, and that's not somebody that I want to be. And so I just never said anything about it because I thought people would think that I was bragging. And like, look what happened to me, and I didn't want to feel that way. I didn't want people to feel like that's what I was doing. I didn't want people to have that impression of me. And so I just kept my mouth shut, never said anything about it. Um, but whenever somebody gave me the idea to do this new series on my channel, then I thought this might be an opportunity to tell people about it. Um, because it really is a very special thing that for me that that happened, and I'm really happy. I'm very blessed. I was very blessed, and I'm very thankful that I got to experience that. And so I thought I thought it for this new series it would be a very interesting story to share with you guys. Um, but again, uh, I really did before think about making a video about it whenever I was first getting involved with it, but again, there was several different reasons why that I decided not to. And then then whenever the film did come out, I just didn't want people to have a bad impression of me. I didn't want people to think I was bragging or that I was like, hey, look what I can, look what I did. I didn't want people to have that impression of me, and I hope people don't have that impression about me now. I'm not doing this because I'm bragging or anything like that. I mean, that's not me. That's not who I want to be. That's not what I want to do. And like I said, I did this because it's part of the story thing, and it really did happen. And people, I thought it'd be an interesting story to share with you guys. And but again, that really did happen. And so yeah, real life Derpy. And I'm totally, and I know some people might wonder, are you okay with not having any lines in the movie? I'm totally cool with it. I'm totally fine with it. Because I was just happy being able to be a background character like Derpy. I was just happy being able to be that, and I was just happy to be able to be on set and experience it. Like, I was totally fine. I mean, and I still am. I'm totally cool with not having any lines whatsoever because I'm just happy that I was able to be there. I'm happy that I was able to be there and experience it firsthand and be able to see how everything come together. Be able to see how, from behind the scenes how a movie comes together. And I got to see some incredible people. I got to meet some incredible people, and I got to work with some amazing people, and I got to be in an environment that I've never been in before, and I got to experience it and understand that for me, I could totally do that. That I would be totally fine in that environment and in that setting. And I learned something about myself with that, and it was so cool, so amazing to be able to see everything come together. And I was very blessed. I'm very blessed to have that experience, and I'm very thankful for it. And it was truly an honor, and I'm very, very happy for it. I'm very, very happy. And like I said, I'm totally cool. I'm totally chill with not having any speaking lines in the film because, like I said, I'm happy that I just got to be there to see it all happen. And again, I'm totally cool with being a background character because, here I am, a brony. One of my favorite characters is Derpy, and I got to be the very thing that she is. I got to be a background character. I got to be just derping in the background. So again, I loved it. And if I ever got to be got to be a background character in another film, it will never happen. But if it ever did, would I be okay with having a couple of speaking lines? Probably, but again, I'd be totally cool again with just being in the background. Again, because here I'm just derping it up, But again, that was the story of how I got to be a background character, how I got to be a real-life Derpy. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, anything you want to say, please feel free to do so in the comments below. Thank you guys again for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next video that I do. Take care.